Are you ready for a new beginning? Are you ready for something new? Well, it is an opportunity to say Happy New Year on this first Sunday, this first weekend of Advent. And in reflecting on this Sunday, we reflect on this beginning and what God might want to do with us that is new. The word Advent means coming. And so it's an opportunity for us to reflect on the comings of Christ, meaning Christ when he came the first time, the incarnation, Advent as a preparation for the Christmas season, but also then that second coming of Christ, Christ coming at the end of all things, as judge of the living and the dead, as the final separation, which we heard in last week's gospel about Christ the King. And so we see a continuity as well as a newness as we begin this liturgical year, because we begin our focus on Advent with the second coming of Christ, focusing on being ready for Christ to come again. There's a priest whose name was Father Alfred Delp, and he said all of life is really Advent, because we are situated between the two comings of Christ. We're situated between that first coming, that past event, the future coming of Christ, and we're focusing on how Christ is present now, even as we await his coming again, as we celebrate his coming among us the first time. We're in between those two great realities. And so it's a time for us to, as he says, be shaken awake, to be shaken awake, to be prepared for Christ to come. And this is what we hear in our gospel today as well, where we hear about Jesus' command to be watchful, to be ready, to see how God wants to work in our lives, in your life and my life, in this new year ahead, in this time that's ahead. Recognizing that God always has something new, something good prepared for us and in store for us. I was struck very much by some of those images from our first reading today, from the prophet Isaiah. One of those images, he says that we can become like dried up, withered leaves that are simply blown away by the wind. And so what we can see in that image is a confusion between the leaves and the tree. See, really, we're not the leaves, we're the tree. We're the tree that's firmly rooted. A tree at this time of year has lost its leaves. The tree appears naked. And this is an image for us because we can say, sometimes we take the things in life, we treat our leaves as if they're essential, as if we need them to survive. But we know, in fact, the tree will survive being stripped bare of its leaves. And in fact, something new will come, new leaves, new growth will come. And so it's the same thing for us in our lives. There's things that we're being stripped of, things that are being taken away. We know with the coronavirus, some of those freedoms, some of those things we took for granted are being stripped away. Or it might even be the loss of a job or something that we have identified with ourselves that's stripped away. That might be hurtful and painful to lose. And yet we have to see that's not our entire identity, that the Lord has something new in store for us, that there will be new growth as long as we are deeply rooted in him, as long as we're those trees that are otherwise healthy. We can survive winter. We can survive the struggles and the difficulties of our life. Another image that Isaiah uses is that image, of course, of the potter and the clay. And to recognize, again, that we are the clay and not the potter. So often we see ourselves as the potter, like we have to shape and mold whatever it is that we're going to become. That's very much the idea in our society today. You know, I need to kind of invent myself or reinvent myself or make something of my life. And really we're called to see ourselves as the clay that's ready to be molded by the potter, to see what God wants to do in our life, to recognize that he is the primary actor, that we need him in our lives, that we can't simply do it on our own. Our own efforts are ultimately going to end up in loneliness, unhappiness, disappointment, so many aspects of life. If we try and do it on our own, eventually we're going to see that it's just not working, that we need to invite the Lord in, allow him to be the primary actor, to allow him to be the potter and we the clay. There's a beautiful song by one of my favorite Christian artists, whose name is Pat Barrett, called "The Canvas and the Clay." And one of the refrains says that, "When I doubt it, Lord, remind me that I'm wonderfully made. You are an artist and a potter. I'm the canvas and the clay." So it's a beautiful image of recognizing that we are meant to be canvas and clay for the Lord. The Lord wants to do something beautiful in us and through us if we're open and ready for his coming into our lives, into our hearts, so we can see what God wants to make of us in this year. And so it's reminding ourselves that God is not finished with us yet. It's reminding ourselves that the truth is something that more is going to be happening, that God is not finished. And so we can say, oh no, my leaves are gone. I've been stripped of so many things. Lord, what's going to happen now? Or we can say, Lord, I'm just this lump of clay. I've tried to make myself into something, and it just comes out a mess. But this is our opportunity then to turn ourselves in a deeper way over to the Lord and to recognize it's Jesus coming among us that changes everything. God coming among us as that small child changed the whole world. And Christ will come again among us and again change the whole world forever. That ultimate end. For those who are called into the kingdom, no more suffering, pain, or any of those struggles that we have in our lives today. And so this Advent is a special time for us to reflect on these two comings of Christ, to recognize that we're situated right in the middle of them, that all of life is an Advent. It's a reflecting on the gift of Christ's first coming, a preparation for Christ's second coming, and seeing Christ with us now, today and every day, in terms of our prayer, in terms of our relationship with him, in terms of our opportunity to receive the Eucharist and receive the sacraments, to see that Christ is present among us in these ways and many others, so that he does not abandon us, but helps us to prepare for his coming again. So we are those naked trees. We are that lump of clay that are called to be ready and watchful for what God wants to do in us and through us in this year ahead. So are you ready for the beginning? Are you ready for something new? This is what Advent calls us to open our lives and our hearts to the Lord so that he can do something new in this year.